Duel Terminal History, Original War. The unending struggle in the Duel Terminal world. The history of the battles in the Duel Terminal begins with Synchro Awakening, and unfolds from there. Why are the monsters who live there fighting? What is the fate they follow? What will the conclusion be? Let us talk about the story here. Invaders suddenly appear. On this distant star, each tribe or clan fights to ultimately reign supreme. For the longest time, the war just waged on, with no one group holding the advantage. However, this battle that no one thought would ever end was suddenly brought to an abrupt halt, as the worms, invaders from outer space, suddenly crashed on the planet. To combat the approaching invaders, the ice barrier freed Brionac, an ancient dragon that had been sealed. It pushed back the worms with its power. Against the landing worm forces, the stalwart warrior of the Flamvel sallies forth. The flames on his arms surge forth, scorching away the invaders. The form of an organization that extends beyond the tribes and clans. To combat the invaders, the tribes and clans were forced to form a truce and unite together. The four tribes that were the most powerful forces on the continent formed their own organization, Ally of Justice. Bringing together each of their technologies and crafts, they began to develop anti-worm weapons. Ally of Justice. The performance of Catastr, who was developed early on, was shown to be excellent, causing huge gains against the worms at every frontline battleground. The autonomous power reactors, known as Gen X, began to move at the same time. The invasion of the worms intensifies. The invasion of the worms intensifies with each passing day, causing the fight to spread across the continent. Not even the forest where the peaceful Naturia lived was an exception. Originally they were a tribe who disliked fighting, but they were forced into combat in order to protect their home. With claws that tear apart and fangs to crush the enemy, he uses them to protect Naturia forest where he and his friends live. An unknown substance was gathered from the meteorites the worms rode down on from the stars. Because of this, the Ally of Justice machines had their processing and brain power increased by leaps and bounds. Rather than annihilating the worms, the engineers shifted their focus to capturing and analyzing them, in an attempt to use the foreign invaders to further strengthen the Ally of Justice. Upset with the premise of capturing and using the enemy, Mist Valley began to grow distant from the others. They began to desire only fighting alongside each other. The sealed gods reawaken. The cacophony of the wars on the surface caused the fabled, who had been sleeping deep within the earth, to reawaken. These gods lended their hand against the invaders, but it was all in the name of fulfilling their own ambitions. After having watched battles desolate the ground below, Valkyris descends to the nearby realm of the Jiracs. The invasion of the worms has barely affected the Jirac and the fabled. But when the wicked gods suddenly struck, the Jirac fought back with the flames that covered their bodies. Gen X, which are able to slay the ever-evolving worm invaders, modified their bodies into something more suitable for combat. The world is swallowed up in chaos. The advent of the fabled, along with the worms, drove the world to the height of chaos and confusion. Even when they've been defeated time and again, the worms reappear the next day like crashing waves in the midst of a storm, and with the fabled interfering in fights as if to ridicule them. Those who fought found themselves increasingly fatigued. Appearing on the bloody battlefield where the invaders and the current tribes battle, they perform indiscriminate hit-and-run attacks. It seems they enjoy causing chaos on the battlefield. The Gen X reach the end of their self-improvement, taking on the figure of our Gen X after obtaining a new power. While they don't have the same output in terms of being power reactors as the Gen X, their combat capabilities have skyrocketed. The second dragon is released. With more and more soldiers continuing to be slaughtered, Ice Barrier released the second ice dragon. Its breath can turn thousands of enemies instantly into ice sculptures, which then shatter. Reinforcements appear in Mist Valley. Having cut themselves off from Ally of Justice, the Mist Valley clan had been fighting without help from anyone else, forcing them into a difficult battle against the unending hordes of the invaders, unable to call for aid. However, troops suddenly appeared from a gust of wind. These troops that rushed to help with the crisis of Mist Valley were the legendary Dragon Knights, Dragoonity. A family who passed down the secrets of using dragons. The Dragoonity are said to be able to become one in body and in mind with their dragons. Said to dwell in Dragon Ravine, a place whose existence has practically become a myth, the Dragoonity are said to appear in the midst of turmoil and unrest. The final battle against the worms. The invasion of the worms became increasingly strangely sporadic, but the tribes and clans hurried on constructing their ultimate weapon, suspecting a final battle was in order. And then, a gigantic ominous worm, that no other up to this point could be compared to, emerged. Prior to Zero appearing, it detected a spatial distortion. From a tier in space, an object with mind-boggling mass appears. Zero is reported to be consuming the other worms, growing stronger and stronger, swallowing everything. It kills from merely moving, and the tribes could no longer hide their despair. The trump card of Ally of Justice, the quickly built supreme anti-worm weapon, is sent to the ultimate decisive battle. As the battle swings back and forth, it finally ends in it barely defeating Zero. A force opposes the gods. Freed from the threat of the worms, the tribes and clans were uproariously joyous. But their joy did not last long. The fabled who had calmly been watching finally made their move, in a scheme of world conquest. On the other side, the Argenex and the Ally of Justice negotiated, and agreed to work together. The fabled appeared almost at the same time as the wicked gods were completely revived. Taking orders from the fabled gods, they used their magic, serving as the vanguard of an invasion. New weapons were made to destroy the fabled, whose numbers continued to surge ever further all over the planet. These weapons were made combining the power reactors of the Argenex and the technology used to make the Ally of Justice. The Jirax, the victims of the most intense attacks of the Conquest scheme, transformed their bodies into meteors, and completely razed the land where the fabled dwelt. From the ashes, a new fire was born, the Neo-Flamvel. The wishes of those who lost their bodies by dropping the meteor awoke the god of the ancient flames. The tribe of fire becomes one with the ancient deity, sweeping away the fable that remained in their realm. And the world, due to the endless struggle, the world had been ravaged. Based on the situation, the ice barrier was determined to break the seal of Trishula, the final ice dragon, without knowing that doing so would lead to the destruction of the entire planet. The voice of the medium was unable to reach the rampaging ice dragon, and the mirror was powerless before the furious dragon. Awakened from its slumber, the oldest and strongest dragon, Trishula, rages out of the control of the ice barrier. In the end, it froze over the entire planet, causing time to stop on the planet.